The Landscape Institute always encourages licentiates on the pathway to chartership to join a study group. This guide talks about why study groups are so important, how you can find an active study group to join, or how to set up a study group of your own, and some ideas for how you can approach study group meetings and sessions. So what is the point of joining a study group? Why do we go on about these so often? Study groups provide an excellent support network. They bring you together with other people on the pathway to chartership, and often the contacts that you make will prove invaluable throughout your professional career. Study groups help you to share information. All of you in the group will have different areas of expertise in landscape architecture that you work in on a day-to-day basis, and study groups allow you to share that knowledge and then gain knowledge from other people. Having people who work in different forms of practice, such as private practice, charities or public sector, will also help your understanding of different areas of the syllabus. Licentiates are always encouraged to gain knowledge and experience outside of their own day-to-day work, and discussing projects that you haven't immediately worked on with others can also help with this. And finally, the chartership exam relies on you being able to communicate your knowledge to strangers. Study groups are therefore a fantastic way of practicing speaking clearly, concisely and effectively while surrounded by your peers and in a safe feeling space. There are a number of established study groups across the UK. All the study groups that we know of are listed on our website with a contact name and email address for each group. However, we are aware that there are some gaps in the distribution of study groups across the UK. So if there isn't one near you, why don't you set one up? Setting up a study group may sound initially rather daunting. However, it's surprisingly simple. The things that you need to consider are a space where you can meet, how frequently and when you will meet, what you're going to discuss, and finally finding some other people to talk to. I'll take each of these in turn to show you how easy it can be. Your first port of call when setting up a study group is finding other people to talk to. How about your colleagues or your friends who are currently on the pathway to chartership? You can also advertise for other people to join you in the Chartership newsletter, which I send out around the 10th of each month. You could also advertise in your branch newsletter to find other local people. Ideally, you'd like your group to be about 4 to 8 people. Any more than that, and you won't all get much of a chance to talk. Fewer people is absolutely fine, and having just 2 or 3 of you can work very well. Just be careful that you don't end up talking around in circles about areas of the syllabus that you're not sure about. If you are lucky to have lots of interest, why not think about dividing up into smaller groups, either by location or perhaps by proximity to taking the exam. Ideally, you'd have people in your study group with a whole range of experiences and at different stages in their progression to chartership. So again, you can all learn from each other. Other things that you might want to think about: there may be other people who haven't yet signed up for the pathway to chartership, but are thinking about it. And so an invitation from you to join the study group might well give them that extra push in order to finally get round to registering. Also, ask new CMLIs in your area if they'd like to either continue with their current study group or whether to join a new one. It's great for them to continue to reflect on the profession, and of course your work doesn't finish as soon as you've passed your chartership exam. And finally, if there are some of you who'd like to set up a study group, but you're finding a convenient location difficult, why not think about linking up your offices or homes on Skype or any other internet-based video messaging service? So once you've got some keen people, you need to think about where best to meet. It needs to be somewhere that's easily accessible for all members and quiet enough that you can have a proper discussion. It also needs to be somewhere that everyone feels comfortable in talking. You don't have to use the same place every time, and it may be that you find alternate spaces depending on what type of meeting you're holding on that particular occasion. So the spaces could include an office meeting room. So this is really good for inviting external speakers to and gives it a more formal edge to your study group meetings. A pub or a cafe. These are good for general catch-ups and obviously are more relaxed than being in an office. Or some other library or community space. Also consider whether you do actually need to meet in person. Skype or conference calls are always a good option. So you've got people, you've got a venue, you now need to decide when and where and how frequently you're going to meet. Having regular time slots makes it easier for people to remember and also means that you've got something to work towards on your individual study. We recommend starting with fortnightly meetings, but you might find that weekly meetings mean you can keep the momentum going and ensure that you actually do something pathway to chartership related every week. You may also want to vary or really increase meetings when you're coming up to taking your exam. You need to think about everyone's work, life, social commitments, as well as travel times to the chosen location. So would evenings, lunchtimes, even weekends work best? The length of your meetings kind of depends on how many of you there are. However, in general, people aren't really able to concentrate for anything over 2 hours, so do try to wrap up before that point. If you haven't covered everything in that time, make a note of the topics you haven't covered and start with those at the next meeting. There is some new evidence to suggest that not totally finishing a task and actually leaving the rest to another time can improve your creative thinking around the topic as your brain continues to mull over it. So once you've got your study group members, you're going to meet up in your local library on Wednesday evenings at 8 p.m. for an hour and a half. You've got your first meeting. There are some things you need to do in the first meeting in order to set the tone and the agenda for the rest of your time as a study group. So rules might seem a bit unnecessary and a bit draconian, but it is a good idea to set some so everyone knows what to expect from their study group. This can include things like making sure that all comments made are constructive, agreeing that all the projects you discuss remain confidential, what happens at study group stays at study group, and you also need to agree for someone to take charge of each meeting to ensure that you're sticking to relevant topics and to the timing, and also to make sure the group actually does meet. You can take turns at this if it does seem too much for one person. Finally, you also need to work out a system for how you're going to share the information that you gain and also the notes that you each take from study group. So this could be the organiser emails everyone after each session, or that you all upload your notes to Dropbox or some other cloud. So as a group, you'll hopefully all be at different stages of your pathway to Chartership, and you'll definitely all be working on different sorts of projects. So make a note of the group's knowledge, strengths and weaknesses as a whole. This will help you divide up the syllabus into areas which you know you can cover internally between yourselves and areas which you think you're going to need to get in some external support and guidance, as well as doing your own research on those topics. And finally, think about how you're going to break up the syllabus. Are you going to do one syllabus area per topic, alternate between the group's strengths and weaknesses? Remember that in order to pass your exam, you will need to think about the syllabus holistically. So although you will need to study topics and areas in isolation, you do need to discuss all the links between the areas. So some ideas now for what you could do during your study group meetings. You wouldn't want to do all of these in each meeting, but do try and shake things up a bit and think of different ways that you like to learn as a group. Some of you will be visual learners, some prefer words, and others prefer to actually do something in order to fully understand it. Using different methods of learning and discussion will also help you keep everything a bit fresher and help it stick in your mind. So from the identified group strengths, you could each present a project that you've worked on, explaining how it relates to the syllabus. If you can bring in any paperwork associated with that for the rest of the group to look at, that would be brilliant. So for example, talk about an LVIA that you've done, bring in the actual report and then discuss how you came up with those facts or figures. Have a look at the case studies on the LI website. These are all really interesting projects that our registered practices have submitted. Have a look through those to see how they would relate to the syllabus, and you can then use these as a jumping off point to create some more hypothetical scenarios. Everyone has to write their development packs, and obviously everyone writes in a different way. However, you could compare the structure that you use in your development packs, particularly if your mentor or supervisor has commented on that structure. That could be either positively or negatively. Other people may be using a structure that's different to yours and something that you maybe hadn't thought about. It's also a good chance to discuss the depth that you go into in all your logs, and will also hopefully make sure that everyone actually manages to submit their development packs on time. You can then individually present research you've done on a specific learning objective within the syllabus. The rest of the group can then ask you questions on that topic. Make sure that you should always relate the learning objective to other areas of the syllabus and also back to your own experience. Although this is great for the person who's doing the presentation, it does limit the number of people talking in each session. And obviously one of the main advantages of a study group is practicing speaking out loud. And finally, another idea would be to create some kind of infographic of parts of the syllabus, as many of them contain processes that need to be followed. So, for example, the planning process or things to consider when running a contract. And again, this might help people who are more visual learners and also might give you a takeaway that you could then pop up on your kitchen wall and revise at a later stage. So your study group sessions can and should also include contributions from external sources, and this should be particularly for the areas that you've identified as your group weaknesses. You could invite external professionals of all backgrounds, so they don't have to be landscape architects, to talk about their areas of expertise. So that could be someone who works in planning or as a BIM specialist, Always ensure that you give them a proper brief on exactly what you want them to talk about. Make use of any newly qualified CMLI in your area and ask them to come and talk to the group about how they found the studying process on the pathway to chartership and their experience of the exam. They've obviously been through exactly what you're going through now, and so should be able to help. Similarly, if one of the LI supervisors or examiners happens to live in your branch, or even better that you work with them, ask them to come along and talk you through from their point of view about how the pathway to chartership works and the exam as well. If you're a small group particularly, consider joining up with another group for a one-off session or maybe every couple of months. Again, this could be by Skype or in person. So this will introduce you to other licentiates in the same position and give you some more strangers to talk to, as well as exchanging the group's strengths and weaknesses. If one of you is working on a project that happens to be on site, try and arrange a visit for you all to see it. Being on site and talking to someone who knows the project should bring your theoretical knowledge to life, and it's also a great way of thinking up hypothetical things that could go wrong on site, which would then be useful to give as examples in your exam. External lectures and courses can also be really helpful. Many of the branches offer seminar series based on the Chartership syllabus, and there are a couple of external providers as well. If a few of you from the group attend together, you can then better compare notes and discuss the points raised afterwards. So one of the most important things and useful things you can do as a study group is mock exams. There are a variety of ways of doing these, and obviously nearer the time of your exam you should definitely focus on answering in the time allowed, so that's 45 minutes or up to an hour. So a useful event that you could hold in addition to a regular study group session is a speed mock exam or a mentor swap. The format is really the same as speed dating. So you should pair up and travel round all the mentors, spend 5 minutes with each mentor being asked syllabus-based questions. If you give each mentor a syllabus extract, which are available on the website, and you have one in your pair, you can then tick off the areas you've been asked about, so you don't have 5 sets of questions just on the code of conduct. So some things to consider with this. Some mentors might be more comfortable just asking questions in their own specialism, and that's absolutely fine. Just ensure that you do have a variety of specialisms in the room. This could be an event that your branch could help you with, so in arranging a venue, refreshment, or maybe drumming up some more mentors. And they don't actually have to be your official mentor. Ask your friendly neighbourhood new CMLIs, or if some of you are happy to sit out and ask the questions, that's also good. You can practice your listening skills, and hearing somebody else's answer may trigger some ideas of how you would answer that question yourself. So another way of practicing mock exams as a group is to then split off actually into pairs. This works particularly well if there are a few of you who are preparing for the exam, while the rest of the group isn't quite at that stage yet. So you need to provide your partner with your most recent development packs and your CV, which is the information that the examiners will be concentrating on. Spend the time before you meet up for the mock exam looking at your partner's packs and CV and prepare questions based on their personal experience as they've evidenced in their development packs. Try and forget anything that you know that they've told you about. Just focus on what they've actually written down. When it comes to the time, take it in turns to ask each other an experience-based question. Try to stay in character as an examiner while questioning. So try and keep a straight face and not help out your partner too much with the answers. You could also intersperse some more generic questions based on the question bank on the website, which your partner should then answer while trying to relate it back to their own experience. At the end of the session, you can go over all the questions together. Make a note of any questions you found easier or harder to answer, as well as talking through any techniques you found helpful for bringing in your own experience. So you'll all find different ways of holding your study groups that will work best for you. And as long as you're all talking about landscape architecture, linking it back to the syllabus and linking it back to your own individual experience, you'll be absolutely fine. If you do need further ideas or support, you can talk to other licentiates, talk to new CMLIs, talk to your mentor, ask your supervisor in their feedback for help. And most importantly, please talk to me. I'm always happy to help in any way I can.